Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited that you could be here today, and we thank you for joining us on short notice. Things move quickly in this cybersecurity world right now, and so we wanted to hop on and have an opportunity to speak with all of you. We're so excited to have so many people here from throughout our ecosystem, whether that's 3PAOs, strategic partners, government members, provider members. We've really got the whole gamut here today, and we thank you all for taking the time to be here. We really hope that this webinar will add value for you and that you will have an opportunity to ask some questions if we don't answer them before you ask. And if during this webinar you do have a question, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. That will be accessible to you. We will answer questions at the end, time permitting. But know that if we don't get to your question, we do have your name and your contact information, and we will be sure to follow up with you via email after the event so that your questions can be answered. With that, I am very pleased to be joined today with Leah McGrath, our Executive Director of GovRAMP, Fred Brittain, Executive Advisor to the PMO, and then J.R. Sloan, our GovRAMP Board President. We are all really, really happy to be here to talk with you, and we are just going to kick it off and dive right in because an hour seems like a long time, but it is not. So on that note, I just want to start kind of with an overall question, and I'm going to direct this to Leah to start, and then we'll go to JR. Can you just start by sharing your understanding of the recent changes to FedRAMP and how those may impact GovRAMP?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for all of you being here today. Not to speak for FedRAMP at all. So if you want to see what the proposals are, I'm going to start by saying, please visit fedramp.gov and you can see the sections around FedRAMP 20X. But, we had the opportunity, our team did, to be part of or attend the announcement by the FedRAMP director on Monday who really walked through kind of the vision and goals and really applaud the administration for thinking about how do we improve this process. And so if I were to sum it up, I think the vision is about how can we be more efficient, utilizing automation tools to drive efficiencies around that authorization process and to bring innovation to government faster. So if you go to your website, you can read much more. I'm just summing up my understanding and kind of takeaway as to where they're trying to go. And, for us, that's exciting to hear because, GovRAMP for our team working with the PMO, we're going to be really staying apprised of what's happening, participating in the working groups and thinking about how those potential changes or even the ideas that are put forth could impact GovRAMP because we are always innovating. We're always thinking about how do we improve security, how do we improve that process, and really importantly, without sacrificing security. Because that's something that I'm so proud of our founders, of our committee members, is really about how do we drive that framework harmonization, how do we drive innovation so we can bring innovation to government faster, but without sacrificing security.
Agreed, Leah, and I think that all of us would agree with that sentiment. JR, what about you? Any thoughts about the changes coming to FedRAMP or what you could see as an effect that might have with GovRAMP?
Sure. And I also agree with everything that Leah shared. I mean, I think all of us in our daily roles in whether it's IT leadership, cybersecurity leadership, we must be looking for efficiencies and where we can improve our processes on a continuous basis. So with that, I also applaud those efforts and those sentiments. But I want to acknowledge that, like with any introduction of change, it feels uncomfortable and it feels uncertain. That with I think we've all seen a rapid pace of change within the federal government, and so that introduces uncertainty. I'll say as I've navigated my own career, is approach these times and you just kind of have to hold on and navigate and one step at a time, right? Don't don't panic one way or the other. And I think what for GovRAMP, what I see in this is that we represent a place of stability in some uncertain times. That we will the importance of GovRAMP, I think, as an entity serving the state and local government landscape potentially is more important. Not knowing maybe what the future holds. So that's what I think. Again, we want to continue to walk alongside, partner with FedRAMP in any way that we can to support, because I think at the end of the day, as Leah said, right, the security and securing the data and providing state and local governments with the assurances that they can engage with these solution providers confidently and partner with them, and then that shared data stewardship responsibility fulfill their missions is top of mind, and we can't compromise that.
Well said. Fred, we're not going to leave you out of the conversation. I would like to toss over to you. What opportunities do you think that these FedRAMP updates may present for GovRAMP?
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I echo the sentiments shared by my colleagues too. I mean, I look at what we offer here and a very strong value proposition that we bring, that consistency and trustworthiness. As many know, we started this program really modeling a lot of things at FedRAMP, but then we started to hear more needs from state and local governments, higher ed, around, a richer pool of bidders when you go out for RFP and ways for providers to get started in small businesses. And, I think what we've done here is we've also created a standard of excellence that people can also get started and achieve. And, as I think about what the stamp GovRAMP means for a provider, it is a symbol of excellence. And as in the uncertain times, and applauding the FedRAMP office for having to deal with really significant cuts and trying to say we're going to come out of this better. The jury's out on what that's going to look like and the degree of success. But I think through all of that, what we can say in GovRAMP is we're still going to be steadfast. And so I think that's one of the things that now we can say is, yeah, we started trying to look like FedRAMP. We're now something different, and we're not going to be going through the struggles that they are. So it really means something to have that GovRAMP stamp. And for those that have been working with FedRAMP, we would also, of course, encourage them come over and use the work that you've done with assessors and get through and get our stamp.
Couldn't agree more. Leah or JR, any thoughts from you on what opportunities this might present GovRAMP with these changes?
I think what I would add is, along with the stability and the assurances, right, we want to be, we'll say, a broker of trust between, I'll say myself as a state CIO and the providers. And, I think, Fred, alluded to it, but frankly, we modeled GovRAMP initially off of the FedRAMP model. So to be, we have to thank them for a good starting point. And our role now is, we want to continue to improve ourselves. So, again, I think that the opportunities are that we may have learnings and opportunities for efficiency that we'll find that come out from their exercise and their process as we do our own self-reflection. And continue to receive good input. That's one of the key things that has made GovRAMP what it is today, is the community that has come around from the IT leaders and cybersecurity professionals, as well as all of the partners and cloud solution providers that have brought input into the process to help us come up not only with, I'll say, kind of similar like for like offerings, as FedRAMP, but be able to have additional offerings that meet especially smaller providers where they are, but still provide the assurances and protection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that one of Leah's favorite phrases, and I love it, is, iteration by innovation. And we are definitely, that has been a path we have taken, and I think that will continue for sure. Leah, did you have anything to add, or should we move forward?
We can move forward. I was just going to say, I love everything, JR, that you just said. I'm so glad we're recording this because that was such a great description of, I think, the opportunities that we have. But one of the things that I love is that innovation through iteration, we have that ability to be the playground and proving ground. So as these ideas come forward, to be able to bring our members and stakeholders together to say, is this something that we should try? Right, is so exciting. The other opportunity that I think we have is to continue to drive that conversation around framework harmonization and how to leverage the data to drive us toward security requirements that matter the most, right? How do we start aggregating that data so that we're not a compliance checklist? None of us want to be that, but rather we are really about driving good security outcomes and that continuous kind of feedback loop to make sure that, we are, as an ecosystem, partnering together, because we are all in this together for sure.
Well said. Yes. There's no way out, right? We
Right.
have to be together. The only way out is together. So I know we mentioned that we will be part of the FedRAMP working groups, or we're going to partake in that. What would you like to see as the outcome of those groups, Leah?
Well, I will start, but I definitely want to hear Fred's comments here too. I know from the PMO, there are a lot of exciting opportunities. I want us to be, a positive outcome for me. I really want us to be a good partner in this effort. I want to find areas to contribute to the conversation, to represent the state and local government and education viewpoints, as well as the provider viewpoint where applicable, because, I was talking about this earlier, and when we think about federal government and state government and local government and the education sector as well, and the providers who are serving across all of those sectors or within, we're all one ecosystem. And so I'm really excited to be a part of these working groups, to kind of hear feedback from others and to be able to contribute in that way to make sure all of those voices are heard.
I love that. Fred, I think you've been tapped on the shoulder here.
I have. So, there's a couple things in all of this, and one, and it of course is, we're going to participate in those working groups, as Leah said, for a variety of reasons. As she said, we want to hear what people are saying. We want to be part of that conversation. But I'm going to even go a little bit of a step further on that, and we think about our providers, our governments, and our 3PAO community. That's all part of our ecosystem that's important. And one of the things that we tried to do early on with StateRAMP, and I think successfully, I would add, is to make sure that those that were seeking both FedRAMP and StateRAMP, GovRAMP, were not having to do two different assessments and, piling on cost and difficulty to achieve that. And so, that is the other part where we want to both contribute and hear, is to make sure that we are also tracking this, to make sure that all members of our ecosystem are not disadvantaged by what happens. We don't want to, become so divergent from FedRAMP that if you want to get GovRAMP and FedRAMP, it becomes twice as hard. And, we value the 3PAOs that we work with very closely. We think they're an important part of what we do. So I think that's a big piece for us as we go through this journey.
I agree. I think it goes right to the heart of what we've often talked about, is, really the collaboration between public and private sectors, and how do we bridge those gaps. And it sounds like it's just going to be a goal to continue that and make sure that that's not lost in the shuffle. JR, any other thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, I think maybe one thing I would layer onto that would be, in the pursuit of efficiency and seeking to, we'll say, improve things. And sometimes efficiency, is just maybe a byword for how can I reduce cost, or how can I shorten the time, Not that we don't want to do those things. We want to do those things, but never at the expense of security. So we don't want to sacrifice security for efficiency. And I think that we will be a voice to advocate that the security and the trust is maintained. And as an organization ourselves, we will not compromise.
I love that.
And I think to that end too, if I may, Jessica, is thinking about, you know, how do we make sure that those doors are open for small and medium-sized businesses? I think that's something that we've worked really hard in the last several years, and Fred and JR both alluded to it, is to make sure that we have a path for those small and medium-sized businesses to be able to achieve and to open those doors. But it's without sacrificing security, to make sure that we are bringing, you know, them to the table as providers ready to serve, who have the secure posture ready to serve as well. And so, you know, I think that's another way that we can be mindful from some of the lessons we've learned along this journey of StateRAMP, now GovRAMP, is how to make sure that we're creating business-friendly processes as well.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that we've done a really great job of helping to grow that ecosystem. And I hope that we can continue to do that. And in thinking of that and thinking of the FedRAMP working groups, you know, is there any next steps that GovRAMP intends to take to try and help facilitate conversation? Leah, did you want to weigh in there?
Yes. So one of the things, you know, we were talking as we were preparing for, you know, today's event, it really dawned on us that one of the things that I think we do really well is facilitate conversation and feedback. And so to that end, I'm going to say, everybody get out your calendars, pencil us in, put us in black marker, save the date for Monday, April 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern. And that's going to be the first of probably many just open sessions we would like to have with all of you, really kind of following on to the working groups that FedRAMP is hosting. What we'd like to do is have a GovRAMP working group, probably in some kind of monthly cadence or every 4 to 6 weeks. And that's a time for us to come together and really aggregate, here's what we're hearing in these working groups. We can discuss what might be applicable for GovRAMP, and also share ideas and hear ideas from all of you as to what you see as most important moving forward. So we're excited to launch that. Look for an email probably coming to your inbox next week sometime, but go ahead and save that date, April 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern. And that will be for our GovRAMP working group to, again, hear what's happening with these FedRAMP working groups and have time to share amongst all of you and hear from our stakeholders. What do you think is most important for us?
I love to hear that. We really do love to collaborate, and it's always exciting when we get an opportunity to do so. So I'm looking forward to doing that alongside you, Leah, and I hope that many of you will join us for that. Let's take another step into the future, right? So Fred, how would you see GovRAMP adapting to some of these ongoing changes in the federal cloud landscape?
Yeah, I love the question, Jessica. So, you know, we stop and say there's a lot that we've adopted from the federal government. And, you know, one of the beauties of this organization is that ability to be nimble and innovate, and aboard, you know, when we have the charge of go listen to the government members and make sure that what you're doing for them is what they say they need. And so, you know, as we're thinking through this and thinking how important, you know, I'm a taxpayer. I want my federal stuff secure, and I recognize, you know, they're all the federal agencies are going through a hard time, and you know, if some responsibilities are pushed out to agencies and they're trying to figure out how to tackle that, that may not necessarily be an easy efficiency for them to pick up. So as we think about what we do, and sort of let me drop down into technical details a little bit and talk. I'm going to use GovRAMP authorized at the moderate level, although, you know, the same conversation can apply to ready and low risk level. But if you look at that, there's 320 some odd controls. And when we selected those controls, we we very intentionally said we want to be very close to FedRAMP so people don't have to go get 2-3 PAO audits. Like, we can use the same ones. So the difference, if you look under the hood, is there's like 4 controls that the federal government uses that we deselected, and they're related to those PIVs. And then there's 5 where we have some alternate guidance. So there's 9 controls in a GovRAMP moderate authorized product that could be different if evaluated at the FedRAMP level. That's not a lot. So what we're saying is there's a lot of federal agencies out there that have some uncertainty, who may be feeling the pressure of they have to do their own assessment. The value of that monthly continuous monitoring is very high. They are expected to do that themselves across every agency. And so we're coming forward saying, what can we do to help them, right? If there is a period of time where there's a sudden growing product list that needs to be reviewed, and FedRAMP does have automation, but that's down the road, there's a period of time, and we don't know what that period of time may be. But what could GovRAMP do? And the answer is they could, a federal agency tomorrow at zero cost could say, we're going to accept GovRAMP moderate authorization. And what can we do at the PMO is, we're always talking, for those of you that have heard, let's talk about CJIS, we talk about overlays. The idea of saying, if someone already has a StateRAMP authorized product, what are the additional things they need to reach something else? And what we've said we can do is we could take those 9 controls and create an overlay at the PMO level and share that with a federal agency if they want to send any of their providers through that GovRAMP process. Happy to do that free of charge. And obviously we can work out, I know federal agencies have the ability to accept a certain degree of risk, which GovRAMP products that go through the approvals committee, they either are or they aren't. The approvals committee is not accepting risk. So there is a possibility that someone might not reach a GovRAMP authorized status, but we could still, if a provider shows up and says, hey, this federal agency has asked me to come through your process, and the appropriate permissions have been granted by the provider to share that information, we could do that. So from my perspective, the door is open for us to say there is a place for us to help federal agencies. We already have that machine built, and we can do some changes. We are looking at that ConMon every single month. There's a whole escalation guide that is pulled together to notify our member governments that could be leveraged by any federal agency. Right. So there's a lot of opportunity because we have used a nearly identical set of controls and approach and those 3 PAO audits. So as we look forward, I think we can help fill any void, whether that be short term or even longer term.
I think that's fantastic. Leah, you were going to say something?
No, I was just, as Fred was talking, it's really just an extension of what we've been advocating for a while, which is that reciprocity. We've had a fast track process in place since the beginning for those products that have a FedRAMP audit. They don't have to be FedRAMP anything, just have had that audit and package completed. They can bring that through to be able to become GovRAMP ready or authorized. And our process is fantastic, thanks to Fred and team and David and Julia and so many who have worked so hard to refine that. What's exciting is what Fred is describing takes it a step further, right? To go beyond that reciprocity and that fast track recognition, to be able to say, hey, we can serve federal agencies in the same way that we're serving our states and our local government and our education members. And that value proposition is the same, right? It's allowing those federal agency leaders to be able to leverage that validation and verification process that our program provides so that they can then focus on managing risk in the way that they need to do for their agencies. And when I think about the potential for our 3 PAO partners, our provider members, just the efficiencies gained throughout that potential is very, very exciting. So thank you, Fred, for bringing that up as I think an opportunity that is certainly an objective for us.
So I'm going to jump in here because Leah, you brought up the idea of reciprocity. And of course, one of the questions that we have in the Q&A is, hey, why is it that reciprocity doesn't go both ways? And, what can we do about that? So maybe you can speak a little bit about just what we've done in the past and what our hopes may be for the future.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. Just for those in the room who aren't aware, I am going to repeat, I think, what I just said slightly, which is we have a fast track process. You're right. We recognize those products who've had a FedRAMP audit. If you've had a RAR or a SAR, and you're familiar with what those acronyms mean, then you know you've had one. Then you don't have to rework. You can submit the same package you're putting together for the FedRAMP office, you can bring to our GovRAMP PMO. And that is a huge value, right? Because you don't have to repeat any work. I can tell you there's one provider, I'm not going to name them, they're a fantastic member, who they had some bets across their team, just friendly wagers in terms of would they get through FedRAMP or GovRAMP first. GovRAMP won, no surprise. We're so proud of the work that our PMO and approvals committee do each month. But that is something that we've had in place to really try to streamline the process for our members, and again, it drives toward more framework harmonization and efficiencies, we believe, for everyone involved. We've been asking for, and often FedRAMP allows for comments, or we've submitted in the past comments to RFIs by OECD and FedRAMP. So there were some things that came out in the past around modernization and more recognition of other frameworks. That's something we continue to advocate for. We always respond and say, hey, you should be giving reciprocity, for those GovRAMP products, or having that kind of, it's our programs, especially at the ready and authorized level, have been very similar. And depending on what happens, GovRAMP may have the higher watermark moving forward even. So thinking about how do we go forward, what I would ask, if you're interested in that, is participate in the working groups and vocalize your desire that there be that reciprocity for the GovRAMP program. I think that's the best thing you can do, is to share your interest in that as well. So it's not just coming from us.
Thank you, Leah. Yes. So I'm going to bop back to some of our other questions here, and then we'll return to the Q&A. I just thought that was very timely, and why not go ahead and address it. Leah, what would you say are the innovations or improvements that GovRAMP is now focusing on to stay ahead in this evolving regulatory environment?
That's a great question. I'm going to let Fred speak to automation because he loves to talk about that, but I will at least say automation is one of them. The other area where we continue to really focus is around framework harmonization, and that includes not only the CJIS aligned overlay that we launched earlier this year. We're also getting ready to launch an AI in cloud products task force that's coming in a couple of weeks, so look for that, where we're really trying to help bring people together to drive standardization around how we evaluate the security of AI in a cloud product. Right. And so that's where the focus of that task force will be. And so when we talk about framework harmonization, it's not just at the state and local level, how do we come together to recognize common baselines? It's also thinking about how do we harmonize or operationalize that harmonization of all of the different federal frameworks that flow down, whether that's, the HIPAA security rules and requirements, MARSI, the Medicaid information services and systems requirements, IRS, right? There are many acronyms, and we recognize that each of those different frameworks have some unique requirements. So to the degree that we can harmonize those and simplify and standardize that process through our GovRAMP security baselines and different statuses that we offer, that's something we're trying to do. We recognize that helps simplify compliance, but also we hope by simplifying compliance, we can strengthen security. So compliance teams and security teams aren't having to just focus so much on the compliance end, but instead they're able to focus on really delivering strong security.
Love that. Fred, automation, everybody's hot topic.
We all want to talk about automation. So let's talk about a couple different angles of automation. And again, thinking about our members, both the government members, what do they want? What do our providers want or need, and what's available to them? And so sort of stepping back to our mission, it's been really important. The message I've heard loud and clear from our board is make sure that GovRAMP is accessible to even small businesses. So when we start talking about automation, a discussion that's been on the table with FedRAMP and us for a long time, one of the challenges is we know there's providers out there who can turn around and say, yeah, we can send our stuff to you in an automated manner, and that's going to be great. And then we have some smaller organizations who are just not prepared to do that. So one of the statements I just want to make about automation is recognizing that while we may be very excited about automation, we also know that not everybody can meet that in the, even in the next few years. So whatever we do, it's not all one or all the other. So that's the first thing to say. The other thing that we think about is, really excited about some of the conversations the FedRAMP office has started around the idea of, could there be a more automated way of even looking at maintenance of status instead of that monthly conmon? Is there something greater? I think that's all fantastic. Would love to get there. And at the same time, our commitment to saying, if you're following a FedRAMP path and you're following our path, let's not put two different approaches in front of you. So we are also having conversations. I mean, as recently as lunchtime today, we were talking with a pretty large organization that has been trying to build out various mechanisms for automation. We would love to adopt some of that and put it into play, but our eye will always be towards, is anybody being excluded, or is there hardships being created through automation? Obviously, JR said it, efficiency, not always the best thing. My time in state government and in the public sector, the last thing you wanted to hear was somebody sending an efficiency expert into your shop. The outcome, invariably you go on the defense. But, we're interested in efficiencies. We're pretty fast, by the way. When a provider shows up and they submit a package, their 3PAO package to us, that's a solid package. We run at about 6 weeks to approval. That's pretty darn good. But the other thing is, we know there's more providers out there. We have more governments adopting. If we do anything in the federal space, there's going to be even more providers. So thinking a little bit too about how do we make sure we are not lengthening the amount of time that it takes for them to get through, regardless of the status, to make sure that they can get that done and do the business that they need, and they're not waiting on us to get the revenue stream turned on.
Couldn't agree more. I do love that we keep returning to efficiencies can't be at the cost of security. If in case anybody on the call can't tell, security is our mission, and that actually matters. So we're just going to continue to pound that drum. I want to talk with you, JR, for a minute about how you see the relationship between FedRAMP and GovRAMP evolving in the future.
So I'll say up to this point, I think we've enjoyed a great working relationship with them. I think we'd like to continue to develop that relationship. If I can forecast in the future, we'll say it's a tight working relationship, taking the topic of reciprocity that Leah talked about, that we will have demonstrated not only to, we'll say FedRAMP, but also to the community at large, that the systems and processes that we use are verifiable and will stand up, and that the credentials that are issued by GovRAMP are every bit as valid and secured as those that were issued by FedRAMP. And that can be then a pathway for suppliers to maybe access federal market space, and that, again, together, that we can better serve the entire community.
I love that. And I would agree. I think our relationship thus far has been very good, and I hope that it will continue on that path. Leah or Fred, anything else around that you wanted to touch on?
JR said it so well.
He did. So with that, I think, the age-old question is, so if you want to get started with FedRAMP or GovRAMP, what would be the best advice that we could give? And I'll give that one to Leah.
I always say I used to say start with StateRAMP. I'm going to say now start with GovRAMP. If you're not a member, join, become a part of this amazing community. Email info@stateramp.org. We'll be updating to our GovRAMP emails here shortly, but you can get to us both ways. So info@stateramp.org, and that will be routed to the right person to help whatever question or need you might have. So, getting started is we try to make this very simple. So we've got dedicated team members who can follow up and kind of walk you through that journey of membership and work with the PMO and how to get engaged. I'd also say if you have interest in being a part of this conversation, please do join us on April 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern time so that we can continue to talk more specifically as we know more, right? As these working groups begin with FedRAMP and we know more about what those next steps look like, we can have that further discussion about what's most important for GovRAMP to consider and hear your ideas as well. So we are also starting our annual renewals for membership. That's every June 1 for our private sector members. So kind of keep that on your radar because that flows right into our committee appointments timeframe too. So really wanting to open the door and make sure that everyone has a voice and an opportunity to participate.
Agreed. And just as an aside, if anybody on the call is a government member and interested from the government side, you are welcome to email get@stateramp.org, and we will be sure to get somebody in touch with you right away to talk about your process, since it's a little bit different than our provider process.
That's right.
I think with that, my questions are complete, and I would love to open it to the Q&A if everyone is amenable.
Yes.
All right. Well, then we're going to start with an easy one for Fred, which is, how does a recent successful assessment under FedRAMP engage with the GovRAMP PMO?
Well, that's pretty easy. And so I would encourage anybody who has that recent assessment to get in touch with info@stateramp.org. We will be right back to you, and you can use that SAR or RAR that you got from the 3PAO for FedRAMP, assuming it's not overly dated, within the last year or so or less. And we can take that through the process. It should be relatively quick. And for those of you that are not familiar with what we do, you do not need to come in with a sponsor. So you can show up, bring us that. We have an approvals committee that 6-week time frame I was talking about includes our PMO reviewing that SAR or RAR. And if it's a SAR, getting it to that approval committee, it's pretty quick. So that would be your first step. And if there's anything in between you have questions about, again, info@stateramp.org.
Thank you, Fred. I think you're going to be on the hot seat a little here. Some of these are fairly technical. As a CSP that is both GovRAMP High and FedRAMP High, what can be shared about reducing ConMon overhead?
That is a good question for which I don't have an answer. There is the process of which the federal government and various agencies are looking at ConMon. We can't shortcut that. And, we do look at the ConMon every month, but in the case of High, that's a place where the CSP is creating the place for us to go and look at it. So I think there may be some different formats, but that is a thing that we're very interested in, particularly with automation and through these working groups, is what can be done to reduce that complexity for those that are doing business with multiple federal agencies and GovRAMP.
I think that's a great suggestion, as these are the kind of things we would love for you to join our working groups and bring to our working groups. Share with us your pain points, share with us your concerns. We cannot always fix everything, but I think one of the things that we're very good at is listening and finding those areas where we can make lives easier for everyone. Because the goal here, as Leah said earlier, is not merely to be, a checklist, but rather to be, a useful security tool. And if there's ways that we can reduce workload, have efficiencies that are not at the cost of either federal requirements or security, certainly we're happy to explore. So I don't know the answer to this. Has GovRAMP talked with DoD CIO about taking the place of FedRAMP equivalents for companies seeking FedRAMP flowdowns for their CMMC compliance?
So we've had many conversations, but not with the current CIO of the Department of Defense. Happy for an introduction if you are offering to make that. I think that is an area where if you've been in any presentations with us recently and we're talking about our strategic initiatives, seeking that CMMC FedRAMP equivalency for reciprocity is a top priority. I think that just makes sense to do. And so that is something that we are talking about in terms of trying to find the right people to have the conversation around how could our GovRAMP, especially at the authorization level, satisfy those CMMC requirements so that there's a faster track, if not reciprocity, in for those providers who are looking for CMMC certification as well.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay. I think we only have one more, and that is, what is the expectation of continuous monitoring and package deliverables when dealing with a FedRAMP High authorized and controlled unclassified information? They go on to say, providing environment details, vuln scans, et cetera, at the high level to stakeholders who are not federal agencies and to another repository seems like it may have a potential security concern. Fred, did you want to tackle that?
I'm not sure I do want to tackle it because so it depends on the federal agencies that you're working with. Quite frankly, there are some federal agencies who are saying, look, you cannot share any of this data with anyone but us as that high security federal agency. Others have not. So there's a question there. There's also questions about the environment itself. If you're using that environment to deliver, and there's somehow secrets in that, and you're using that environment to deliver a high solution to the federal government, is that the right solution that you should be delivering to other governments within that same boundary? So there are some questions there, and it really depends upon the federal agencies. Their ability to offer their own ATOs there is the ability for them to also put some restrictions on that. And so, we have had providers come to us and say, I think of one case in particular where there was a specific federal agency that said, you can't share this. And then there were conversations with the federal agency about some redactions potentially within some of the documents that went into the ConMon for viewing. So that's not something that we can determine directly on that front, because the agencies do have those federal ATOs that they work through.
I mean, you didn't want to tackle it, but I think you tackled it just fine. So there is another comment in here, which I'm just happy to speak to. Private companies with FedRAMP authorization are confused with the proposed changes with 20X. What are the key takeaways? Is it business as usual for the foreseeable future? Does ConMon POAM change? New ATO requirements? And what I would say, Mona, is we can't say. We only have the same information that you have. I wish we could give you more. We would encourage you to continue to stay up to date on that FedRAMP website. They have been posting there. I would encourage you all to be part of those working groups. Again, that's something that we at GovRAMP have done for a long time, that community input. I think FedRAMP will have a lot of value by bringing that community input into the table. So I encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to join our working group and become a member of the GovRAMP community. As our wonderful speakers today have said, we've really been kind of steadfast and steady and trustworthy in this environment, and we intend to continue on that path. So if we can offer some kind of guidance or guiding light for anyone on this call, we're happy to do that. We're very proud of our community. It's a very collaborative community, and I hope that we can continue to, just walk alongside each other during these uncertain times. Okay, we're gonna have one more, and then the couple others that are left, I will say, are very specific. And so I'm gonna make sure that we get back to you with direct emails to answer the last few questions that are in the Q&A. So this one, Leah, I'm gonna toss over to you. Are you expecting that the AI task force would impact what controls would be in place moving forward? Can't get
Possibly.
away without talking AI.
How about that? Possibly. So Fred and I are co-chairing that effort and we have finalized the task force charter with our AI Executive Advisory Council last week or the week before. I can't remember now. So we'll be publishing that, and that gives some direction. But essentially what we are really seeking guidance around, related to your question, Andy, is if Gen AI is a part of a cloud product, so what difference does that make in the security controls or requirements? Are there things that we should be looking at for controls or within the control parameters that are different than our current baselines? We may find through that discussion, no, we're okay. I suspect we will identify a few areas that can be updated. And some of the simple updates may be adding this to the SSP or making, if Gen AI is added to a cloud product, noting that in the boundary or as a significant change. So it alerts just a notification to the participating governments. There are a lot of ways to just kind of have some quick, I'm going to say quick wins in meeting the needs that we're hearing from our participating governments, which some of them just want to know when Gen AI is part of the cloud product to start with. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at is just the process. What difference does our process make when Gen AI is a part of the cloud product? So we will be opening that task force up to all of our members who want to participate, from industry to our public sector members as well. So you'll have an opportunity to participate in focus groups to provide input and feedback and guidance. And then we'll really be leveraging our PMO as well as the appeals committee for some technical support, all under the guidance of our executive council, who will really be making sure that we are answering the questions that our government members have, and also taking an incremental approach. So a very agile approach to understanding, what's most important now and what do we need to be thinking about in the future.
Thank you, Leah.
It's probably its own webinar. I'm really excited for this effort.
Yes. And more information will be forthcoming on that as well. So you won't miss anything. Just keep your eyes peeled, and we'll make sure that you guys are aware when that task force becomes into fruition.
That's right.
So with that, I want to open the floor to our three esteemed panelists for any last words that they might want to say before we close for the day. Leah, we can start with you.
I just really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this process, to be a part of the working groups. And if you've ever worked with me before, I get really excited for change. I love change. I love when we have an opportunity to say, how can we rework this? Are there opportunities for improvement so we're better serving each of you? So just encourage your participation. Don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you, JR, Fred, Jessica, so much for your time today and leadership.
Thank you. Fred, anything to add?
Sure. So we have a monthly internal informational meeting that we always spend the first 2 minutes on some foolish 80s pop culture to torment some of our younger people who think we're talking about punch cards or whatever it is we do. And the line that's going through my head is, the future's so bright, you got to wear shades.
Oh my gosh.
But the reality is, applauding the federal government despite the hard times of trying to stay ahead and not just hunker down, but try to do better. And I think the important thing is, that we're going to be part of that conversation with a focus on our membership, and a focus on the ultimate mission that JR talked about, which is we're all doing this because we're talking about governments that serve the public, systems that serve the public, and that's our job, is to protect that stuff. So, you know, not losing sight of that and everything else is kind of our commitment, and we're very appreciative of all aspects of our community that feeds us, you know, input and advice. And, you know, if you're in any of these working groups and you hear a good idea and you think, gosh, I wish GovRAMP would do something like that, please let us know.
Love that. And we will close out with JR.
I think what I'll add is, again, I'm just very thankful for the forum today, everyone's participation, the questions. A recurring theme that I see across state and local government is that, you know, cybersecurity is a team sport, and all of us together, you know, have a better chance and build a better community. And through information sharing, knowledge sharing, collaboration, those are the things that strengthen us and that enable us to accomplish our mission. And I think we've see it very much in the GovRAMP community. Those that have stepped forward have been willing to share, to participate, to contribute. And that's what we think makes us strong. And that's what has always been a value that for me and in my teams, and being a part of this organization. And so I think going forward, those are the things that we believe that will lead us to that bright future that Fred has articulated. Maybe we can call it lit. I don't know. But we will continue to uphold the values and the mission of our organization to deliver security to the state and local government partners.
Very well said, JR. I can't even add anything to that. I do want to thank everybody for coming to today's webinar, and welcome any questions that you have even after this. You have our contact information. Please join us for those working groups. The first one will be April 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We do not have a link yet, but you will be getting in your email if you attended this webinar. There will be a registration link in the following email. We will also then post it on our events page on the StateRAMP website, GovRAMP website, whatever you choose to call it. No nickels until October. And so ultimately, I just want to thank everybody again for spending your time with us today. And we really look forward to having you continue and build our community. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.